Hi, and welcome. My name is quantumdot, aka Mikey, and my pronouns are he, him. And my guest today is...
robowitch. My pronouns are they, them. And we are here today as a video on demand to raise money for Trans Lifeline as part of SavePoint 2019. Trans Lifeline is a grassroots, trans-led non-profit organization dedicated to improving trans lives by responding to the critical needs of the trans community with direct service, material support, advocacy, and education. If you wish to donate, you can do that by going through to savepoint.stream.
And we're here today playing Chess Two Kingdoms by Takuma Okada. You can find that at noroadhome.itch.io/chess-2-kingdoms. And it is a 2-player tabletop role-playing game using, as you can see, a chessboard to tell the story of two kingdoms. So yeah, we already did some stuff off the board, off the recording, including Fire and Brimstone, which is like a, sensitive topics like what we don't want to see or want to have veiled. If you're familiar with lines and veils as a concept, it's pretty similar. And the kingdoms that we're going to be telling the story of today are, we're playing 2 petty kingdoms who are competing for the resources in favor of a third, more mystical kingdom, because we're both kind of low on resources. So it's like a low fantasy, like Dark Ages kind of scenario. So yeah, and I'm going to be playing the white pieces and robowitch is black.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, I guess I just go ahead and make my first move, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it starts with, I'm just going to start by moving a pawn forward. I'll just move. So, the pawns represent the average citizens of the country. They care least about the conflict, but are the most effective. The people move and react to other pieces. Do they lean on religion, or do they stand in front of their rulers willing to put their lives on the line? I think that's moving away from like the bishop. So maybe this is maybe this represents a like the populace of, I guess, should we give our kingdoms names? I just realized I didn't give my kingdom a name.
I also thought about this, and I was also like, if you've got some ideas, I'm happy to roll with them, but I've got nothing in the tank for myself.
Maybe we'll just like refer to each other for the time being as the White Kingdom and the Black Kingdom.
Sure, that works for me.
Because that way we don't have to try to do the mental arithmetic of figuring out which is what is where.
Totally, yep.
So maybe this is like a citizen of the Low Kingdom starts like tacking flyers on doors that like the religion that we kind of talked about offhand of like fairies and like this kind of like druidic religion. Like maybe they're like if the land really cared about us, then we wouldn't all be hungry kind of thing. So they're like, maybe this is what this is representing is the citizenry being unhappy with the state religion of the White Kingdom. Or the traditional religion of the White Kingdom.
Over to me. Quick question, which I probably should have asked before we started.
Sure.
The pieces in the D and E columns, which is the queen and which is the king in terms of chess pieces?
I was taking the little crown to be the queen when I set it up.
That's also what I was thinking. So I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't like completely forgotten the rules of chess. I'm pretty sure it's the queen on their own color. I've completely forgotten. If not, let's just roll with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But roll with it. Play to find out what happens, right? Let's keep going, I suppose. Okay, so I'm going to move my pawn to here. So the prompt for this is the same one that quantumdot just used. when a pawn moves, the people move and react to other pieces. Do they lean on religion, or do they stand in front of their rulers willing to put their lives on the line? So drawing out kind of the same symbology as yourself, is like, where did it move from? It moves from in front of the queen to sort of the front, so to speak. I think that's what happens here. I think the either due to, I think sort of just by natural migration, potentially, the people of my kingdom have began to drift towards this third kingdom that we're both competing for the attention of. Potentially, they just think that maybe, this third kingdom, with its mysterious, mystical attachment, might be more to their benefit in this time of hardship. Maybe there's something more to offer there. So I think they've started to drift potentially away from the order of my kingdom to look to what else where better they can seek their fortunes.
Yeah. You know what? You were totally right, by the way. The queen does always go on her own color, so I'm just gonna swap this around really quick. Totally, okay. This is totally how it always was.
Mm-hmm.
The small...
There's definitely no video to reprove this. I'm going to swap mine as well.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Boop. There we go.
Okay.
Take what I said and replace it with the word king, and it was all fine. Fix down in post.
I mean, we can always play with the gender roles here too, but
totally, yes, absolutely.
But yeah.
Anyway, back to you.
Yeah. Okay, so my bishop can't move. Maybe what I'll do then is move my knight out. Knights represent the nobles or a similar upper class. They typically have more influence and access to the king and queen. When the knight moves, an event is held. It could be a small tea party or an extravagant gala. Either way, it is at odds with the lives of everyday people during this conflict. So I think what this is we're like, I don't think that, I think that the White Kingdom thinks they have the best interests of the people at heart, but they really don't have any understanding of what's going on. So they're like, okay, we're having our popularity is not, we're not doing too well in the polls. Our people are moving away from religion. Clearly the answer is to have a party to attract this third kingdom, and get there. Like, we're gonna show off what you do when your people don't have enough to eat is you totally have like a gala to show how like your arts and culture and try to attract the I think we said it was a young prince that's looking to wed, and show them our many eligible bachelors and bachelorettes that the prince can marry.
I have interest. What do you think is like the high fashion of your kingdom?
For some reason I'm picturing things as being very floral, like a lot of like light linen, like suits, like maybe like a combination of like what you traditionally think of as like medieval fashion, but also like linen, like tailored shirts and like loose pants and like flowers embroidered on. Because I think this is like a spring festival. Because it's very much in spring here. Pollen is going all over the place, so I'm like thinking of spring.
I love that. That's a very good fashion move. All right, now it's over to me. Okay. I'm going to move my bishop to here. Bishops represent the religious beliefs of the country, not necessarily organized religion. This is what people believe besides their leaders, if they believe in their leaders at all. When a bishop moves, some part of the faith manifests itself in the daily life of the people. It could be a good omen or a prophecy in a dream. Sometimes it is even a small miracle. So for me in this instance, I think that potentially what happens is that if you notice that I've moved from sort of the center of my kingdom's power base, so to speak, over to sort of the rough area where my pawn has gone. So I think that there's some sort of good omen in sort of the little settlement that's cropped up closer to the third kingdom. I think potentially sort of the third, sort of the town there, and it's supposed to be in some kind of like maybe a not like a barren area, but in an area where sort of like it's the crops aren't like the soil isn't great, the moisture isn't where it should be, and I think they sort of strike really lucky, and there's some crop in the area that hasn't been harvested in the kingdom before. There's something like on a fluke being discovered, and they're like, oh wow, this is a great food source that only grows in this area, and they're not quite sure what it is, but it's a good omen and it's getting closer to that third kingdom. I think there's some kind of immediate material benefit that begins to bring more people towards that settlement, even though some people say maybe it's and people start saying that maybe it's a gift from the third kingdom in some fashion.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to then for me to figure out. I know in chess this would not be a good move, but I'm interested to see what happens here. So I'm gonna move this pawn up again. Again, like knowing full well that's not a good place for them to be. But I feel like my populace is not in a great place. So I think so they're seeing that, you know, this resource is found, and I think a band of like highwaymen or something like that like goes out to try to like street pirates to try to see if they can like start intercepting caravans because they've heard of this incredible resource, and also like super don't like how the aristocracy is courting this third kingdom, so they're gonna try to cause some trouble on the roads.
I like that. Back over to me. Okay. So I'm going to initiate some of the other rules here, which are around taking pieces.
Yep.
So I'm going to move my pawn to take your pawn. I think you need to move your pawn off the board.
Yeah.
I don't think it. So
I'll put it over here.
Okay. I think I do a scene, then you do a scene, I think, is the way the rules made it sound. And maybe I'll check to see what that would be for you. I'll just do my scene with the pawn taking rules.
Yeah.
So, when a pawn takes a piece, the people of your country overcome great odds. Do they reject the foreign religion? Do they repel enemy soldiers? Do they produce enough crops and prosper? I think it's a combination of those latter two in this instance. I think what maybe potentially happens is that sort of the highwaymen from your kingdom come over, and then there's a little bit of a sort of firepower offensive in some ways, where sort of they come over with the intent of like, oh, we're going to steal this crop potentially, and take it for ourselves. But I think there's a way in which like they do it, but then they're sort of won over in the process, and sort of like actually they start defending the caravan instead. I'm not quite sure what the motivation would be there. Maybe they're sort of charmed by something on the way. Who could say? But then because the caravan now have greater protection, more of the crop gets through than we expected. And so it leads to more prosperity on my side of the kingdom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it's also like, not only does it lead to prosperity, but also like more confidence, I would imagine too, because now it's like, okay, you know, this that could be taken as an act of aggression. It's like, oh, maybe they were foreign spies or something like that. Because when a pawn is taken, a portion of your populace dies or abandons your kingdom. Maybe it was enemy forces. Maybe it was an epidemic you failed to contain. I think, what if, oh, you know what would be really interesting is like like some people died, I think, for sure, some of these foolish highwaymen, but I think what might also be interesting is if some of them were like converted, because like it's like no, we have this resource, our position is reinforced, what if instead of acting alone, you join up with us and like are like help fortify this, and you get a percentage of it, and it's like way easier than trying to be a pirate and attacking.
I love that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I think what I'm gonna do is just move a pawn out again. It's so interesting playing this game because like I'm not thinking necessarily as your relationships with the pieces like change.
Totally.
Because it's like I'm moving because I want to do this thing fictionally, not necessarily because I want that to be, because that's going to be like a good outcome.
Totally.
And actually I might move that forward too. Yeah. So I think what this looks like is just I think some of the people start worshiping the religion of this third kingdom, or like appealing to them, especially the people on like the borders of the White Kingdom, because now they're under threat, so they're like moving further away from the power base of the White Kingdom and just saying like, hey, help us. We don't really support this kingdom. Like we're not doing too hot food wise. Like give us something, give us a sign. And I think that's it.
It was also kind of strange to me because like I'm like a kind of novice level chess player, and so now I'm just thinking, okay, if I move something, I've got to think of a thing to do with it. Which is kind of limiting my options in some ways, but also kind of encouraged me to maybe think a bit more creatively of like, do I want to do have a pawn scene? If not, I should move something else.
Yeah, that's some of like what I was doing. Is it was like I was moving a pawn so I could move some other things.
So I moved a pawn. I think what's happening here is that this is more of a consolidatory move. So within my kingdom, because this isn't sort of a bold move outwards, this is more of just a shuffling around. So I think there's a move internally to try and restrain people from going in towards the new settlements. Because even though they're doing really well, it seems like there's still this kind of sense of like this is kind of far out from what we usually do. So I think there's a bit of there's a group of people, like a group of ordinary citizens, who are a bit more conservatively dispositioned, and therefore they've moved out from the city centre or moved out from kind of the industrial power base, but they're still pretty close. They're still sticking close to home.
Yeah. So I think what I'm gonna do, because I was checking, rooks can only move one at a time, right?
How do you mean?
Like rooks can only move one square at a time.
They can move as far as they want in any horizontal, vertical direction.
Okay. It is that. Okay.
Yeah, but they can move 2 or 3 or 4, how far they want.
Okay, so this rook is gonna move forward 2 then, and so rooks represent the infrastructure of the country, not just physical things, but all the moving parts that help a country functions. When a rook moves, it shows the everyday happenings in the country. A ferry takes a man and his cart across a river. People relax in a clearing in a large protected forest. So I think what this is like people, I think the council for the White Kingdom says, we can't, clearly that whole idea of doing that festival, like that didn't work out too great. And, we lost some people and it's being viewed as an act of aggression. Like we need to do something to kind of restore the people's faith in us. Or else, who knows, like maybe they're gonna have a revolution. Like we wouldn't want that. So I think this is like the the White Kingdom has like their army and like civil servants go out and start like they essentially have like a composting project to go out and make the land more fertile, and maybe, you know, say some prayers and stuff to, you know, whatever, a show of good faith of like, we're gonna help you get through this tough time and make actual change. So yeah, I think that's what that is.
Ooh. I think I gotta do it to him. This one of the things is like definitely a bad move, but I set that up so well.
I just saw that.
I'm like rubs my hands with glee. Yeah, so I'm gonna move my bishop to take your rook. When a bishop takes a piece, the religion accomplishes some great good. They gain more followers. Perhaps a great miracle is accomplished. And I think because it's particularly the bishop taking the rook, which in this instance for this composting project, assuming you're okay with having a timescale that's of like years, or potentially a bit more elongated, I think what this represents is my kingdom takes an interest in that composting project, like the small community that's on the fringes of mine community. And they are like, that's a great idea. We'll use it to grow with this, you know, fairy crop that we found. And it works really well. And sort of they continue to be able to grow this crop. And then it sort of, I don't know how that necessarily takes away from your infrastructure, but I think that's definitely through the imposition is that, and the faith kind of presents it as a, like, oh, this is some kind of miracle of this composting method, is that it's perfect for growing the crop. This really is a fairy blessing.
Yeah, maybe is it just mushrooms?
I think it's just mushrooms. I picture some kind of like flower, but that you don't usually eat those. So I think it's some kind of like, maybe some kind of blooming mushroom of some kind.
Yeah.
I'm connected to blooming onions, for the record. But there's some kind of like very good blooming mushroom of some kind.
But you can make a really, the bulb makes like a really good like horseradish like sauce.
Absolutely, yes.
There's the blooming onion connection. Oh geez, it's not looking too hot for us here.
I think I see a comeback for some reason. I don't know why, but I think I see a comeback coming.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna do this then.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
So do you want to do your scene first, or do you want me to do my scene first?
I think the rules say you should do your scene first.
Okay. So when a knight takes a piece, the nobles use their status and achieve something they wanted. Sometimes this improves the whole country. Sometimes it only helps the nobles. I think this is like a... I just got this... I played a lot of Civilization 5 in my time. This is like the denounce action. I think we're going to denounce the fairy religion and denounce the mushroom crop.
I'm just imagining a man in a floral suit walking across campus, shaking his finger in the way the Civ 5 people do.
And then, yeah. So this is the nobles give like a public address, and like ride out in like a procession and denounce this, you know, this crop. And formally, I think there's been kind of this very Cold War element to what we've been doing so far, but this is like, no, this will not stand, kind of deal. And
I love that.
And I think they do. I don't know that it definitely achieves something they wanted. I don't think it improves anything necessarily, but it definitely, I think, rallies the common people to their cause. Because it's like, you know, until this point, it's like, yeah, you know, the nobles have been doing all this back and forth shit, but it hasn't really helped us. But the nobles tried to help us, and now the Black Kingdom tried to take that away. So
I like that a lot.
Yeah, so now what's the scene for when a bishop gets taken?
when a bishop is taken, the people lose faith. What causes them to turn away? How do people change due to their loss of faith? And I think there's a twofold answer to this. Some of which is due to the board position, some of it building off what you said narratively. I think building off what you said, I think the denunciation carries some weight into my kingdom as well. I think the word gets around and it really makes people start doubting the validity of what's happening. Because there's the idea well, if the nobles think this is, in some ways wrong, maybe they've got a point. Maybe they're in the right. They are the learned people. They might be from the other kingdom, but maybe we shouldn't be out here. And I think this built into loss of faith because I think people stop. I think that settlement was doing really well, and I think that it starts to look a lot shakier. And in particular, the highwaymen we mentioned before, I think they start deserting. Even though the pay might have been good, they're like, we're from the other kingdom. We got homes back there. If it's going to get bad for our families back there, we're out. Peace. We're going to go back home. And I'm saying that because I've now got one pawn out there by itself on the board. So I think the angle I want to go for is it's not safe out there as much anymore. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm. Now I've got some thinking to do. I think I'm going to move my pawn from c6 from c7 to c6. And I think this is there's an official move, but there's again another sort of official move in some ways where people, even though there's been this kind of loss of faith in the community that's on the fringes near the Third Kingdom, I think there's still some kind of if only a practical attraction to it from citizens. I think we do continue to see people drifting up there.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I gotta do it to him. I think I'm gonna do this.
Ooh.
Because I'm interested. You mentioned that pawn, and I think narratively that makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the queen is the king's partner. They are extremely capable and can do many things the king can't. Usually loved by the people, sometimes despised. The queen can be any gender or have none. And I think the queen of the White Kingdom is gender fluid. And I think they use they, them pronouns. So when the queen takes a piece, the queen takes matters into their own hands. Are their methods elegant or brutal? That's a really good question. I think this is the queen's seen the actions of the nobles and they've seen the actions of the people. And I think this is the queen literally leading a charge and setting up I think they're setting up literal border patrols to watch the roads into the kingdom and out to show people that they're serious about this and forming a perimeter. I don't think they're brutal necessarily, but they're definitely shit's getting really serious. Close. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that a whole lot. Ooh. Okay. So I think we're gonna continue a theme here. I'm gonna move my queen to from e8 to f6. Once again, when the queen moves, the country watches and sometimes it follows. Do others follow the queen? Do they protect them or let them go alone? And I think, building off our Civilization 5 analogy here, I think this is more like when a country warns you. Once again, the finger wagging saying, you don't build more cities near me, don't do any more expanding, or things of that nature. And I think that's sort of not necessarily a denunciation, but there is sort of a formal missive, a formal statement is released around sort of these border patrols and talking about this is an infringement on our nation's sovereignty. We wish only peace with the White Kingdom, and we would encourage them to rein back their border patrols as soon as possible, lest there be any unfortunate consequences, something of that sort.
Well, I see your denouncement, and I raise you a check.
Oh wow, okay. I was expecting to need to flip the check rules. I think you make a queen move and then I do the check rule.
Yeah.
I think.
So I think the queen is like, they crack their knuckles. And I think this is definitely, I think before it was like a pronouncement. And like, this is like, and then the queen went back to their castle and, was taking care of matters of state. I imagine this is like a month or two later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the queen comes out like, actually, I'm picturing like Tessa Thompson's like Valkyrie.
Absolutely.
But like a gender fluid or like gender neutral version of that of Tessa Thompson's character. And so I think the Queen of the White Kingdom comes out in this white this shiny silver armor with, I think, like a cape embroidered with flowers, and they march out to like the very edge of the claim of the White Kingdom and stand there with like a pole arm, and they're like, we will not budge, and like have the entire like army out now.
Okay, when the king is in check, there is a threat to the king's life. The utmost effort is made to protect them. What sacrifices were necessary to protect their life? Based on how the board is laid out, I don't think this is an external threat. I think this is internal. I think what happens is, I think this is an internal, like, maybe there's some sort of distant family relation to the White Kingdom, and there's some kind of sort of foiled assassination attempt or something of the sort. Maybe attempted poisoning, which is sort of miraculously caught before it can happen, and sort of the palace guard resolves the matter. But there's definitely, so again, and it's not quite sure like, why did this happen, and no one seems to say, oh, it's the White Kingdom's fault, but there's this idea of like, this ratcheting up of tension is really going very far, and there's a real threat. In terms of what sacrifices were necessary, I think there's a real tightening of the guard around the palace. So I think there's potentially, again, this kind of civil liberties restriction, and sort of the king becomes much more aloof from the people. So before I've made references to like, official moves to like put communities out there a little bit more, to sort of directing the people towards supporting this or that settlement. I think there's none of that now. I think the king is much more like, there's no kind of nudging anymore. It's a lot more.
Do you think there was also like it was like a poisoning attempt, and there was like a noble's life that got the wrong drink?
Oh, I like that. I love that. And actually, I love that because it's going to build on my next move really well. So going on to that, now we've got a nice setup there. I'm going to move my knight to in front of the king. When a knight moves, an event is held. We've touched on this before, so I won't read it in full. And I think this is a... I think it's an event, but I think it's maybe some kind of trooping of the colour. Are you familiar with the trooping of the colour?
No, I'm not actually familiar with that.
It's basically like a sort of military parade sort of thing in the UK, which is kind of a celebration of the royal family. And I think it's a very similar thing here, where it's the nobles really doing their utmost to show off how supportive they are of the royal family in this time of crisis. And you also note that this covers the check position that you had laid out before. And I think that like the way that comes in is that there's this real effort made in the royal ranks to really make sure there's loyalty to the person of the king. So, and I think that potentially hedges off any wavering doubters within the noble ranks about where their loyalties lie.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think what's going to happen in the White Kingdom is I'm going to move a pawn forward. And I think this is the citizenry, like now the citizenry has like a sword queen, and they're like, that's...
Okay, I think I'm going to do castling, but I recall there being a specific rule for this. Sorry, give me just a moment.
No worries.
I believe it's that that the rules are a combination of the castling and when the king castles, resources are diverted to protect the king. Use a combination of when the king moves and when the rook is taken to create the scene. So I'm going to castle, which, just for people who aren't less familiar with chess, is a move where the king, which can typically move only one square at a time, moves next to the rook, and then the rook moves to the other side of the king. You can do this with either of your rooks as long as both pieces are unmoved. And if you moved either of them, you can't. So you could do it with your rook and your king that are left on the board, because neither of them have moved yet. But if you'd moved your king, you couldn't move him back and do it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So I move my king to g8, and then move my rook to f8. So once again, this is a resources are diverted to protect the king move, and the rook represents infrastructure. I think there's the construction of a. So the rook is about the everyday happenings of the kingdom. You've moved one in the past, and then when the king moves, the country watches. What do people say about the king? So I think that given this is a kind of a defensive move, now to be set up, I think the king. The construction is complete of a new sort of defensive tower within the king's castle, and I think the king becomes notorious for holding up there. Sort of even though the royals are on their side, I think there's some real doubt in the kingdom. There's some real doubt with the king about like, am I really safe? And I think that again, that loose paranoia spreads throughout the kingdom, but in real terms, the king is probably safer now.
Yeah. But it's definitely like the sequestering is not a good look for the strength of the kingdom.
Definitely, yeah. Especially after the nobles have proclaimed we will defend the king to the end. King's like, I'm good, actually. I'll defend myself.
Like... All right, I think I'm gonna move this bishop. So I think it's been a really dry spring thus far. Which, goes again with things not going too well. And I think there's like a rainstorm that just breaks out of like a completely clear sky. Like during the evening, and people fall asleep to the sounds of rain, and when they wake up, I think there's like a bunch of like some like staple crop, like I'm thinking like grass, like corn, like maybe it's just wheat, has like sprung up overnight and is now like blossoming. So, like, there was very little food, and now there is food.
I really like the direction we've gone with the bishops so far. Like I like the way we're thinking about this, like these miraculous events in some ways. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move my knight from e7 to here. And I think this is sort of again continuing my theme of the nobles and the king. I think the nobles initially are very unhappy with the decision. And there's this doubling down on the rhetoric, like we need to demonstrate to the king that we are useful, because he clearly doesn't trust us. So there are discussions made about venturing forth and to do some work in courting the Third Kingdom once again, because perhaps we need some intervention in this conflict to bring the White Kingdom to heel. Oh, what about an event? I think this is another kind of military procession event that's underlining this, which I realize I've gone back to the same theme twice, but I think there is this real militaristic edge to the nobility at this moment in my kingdom.
Right, for sure. All right, I think I'm gonna do this. So I think as a result, I think the nobility of the White Kingdom is a little less militaristic, but they've also, like, the Sword Queen is that's just what they're known by now, is the Sword Queen. That's their like appellation, or their title, or whatever. The word is not coming to mind, but you know what I mean. So they go and when the queen moves, the country watches, and sometimes it follows. Do others follow the queen? Do they protect them or let them go alone? I think so. They are going to meet this militaristic procession. In like, this is like definitely when you have like a noble like marching out onto a field, and then like the other party like marches forward, and then they like stare at each other from like two hilltops, right? And I think the citizenry is like the citizen army is like falling behind, and it's like bolstering the ranks of the royal army. That's really good. They're all in for the Sword Queen.
I love Sword Queen so much. Oh my god. Okay. I think I'd move my queen to here. So we just had the queen text for the queen. The country watches, and sometimes it follows. Do others follow the queen? They protect them and let them go alone. This is definitely going alone. I think that the queen, after that initial denunciation, sort of fades into the background to an extent. But there's a real... I think that maybe she doesn't follow the noble procession at first, but sort of maybe follows in the baggage train, so to speak. But at this kind of provocation, I think that she gets out, sort of... I think not a sword queen like yours, but gets out sort of in her queenly fineries, and goes away from like the conflict and sort of walks across the border somewhere else. In view of like the battlefields, people know that she's doing this, but she's sort of walking across alone. There's no easy way for her to be sort of sniped from the battlefield, but she's making a real, she's crossed the line, basically.
Right.
But not in an aggressive way, but it's just simply walked across, and then simply dares the opponent to, what are you going to do about it? Surely I can simply walk here. I am a queen after all.
Now I'm like getting in the mechanics of chess. Trying to figure out what is the best move in this sticky situation. Sword Queen was not expecting this.
I definitely imagine like the royal fashion, or like the noble fashion of my kingdom is a lot more like Venetian masks and that kind of aesthetic. So I'm definitely kind of imagining just my queen with a huge Venetian mask, very like Wonderful 101, if you've seen that game. Just this huge black mask, which looks very silly, but it is a sort of it's hard to miss, and sort of a glare from across the hilltops.
Right. So I think what happens is Sword Queen gets a missive from the battlefield that their king is fallen ill. And they don't suspect, any kind of play from anyone. But it is something where they're like concerned for the health, and so they stage a retreat back in support of their king. The citizen army is still there, but they are no longer leading the charge.
Ooh. I like this. I like the idea of this scene too much to let it go, so I'm going to do it, even though I'm pretty sure it's a bad move.
Go for it.
I'm going to move to here. Once again, queen movement rules. And this again, the text is the country watches. Doesn't say which country watches. I think my queen sort of continues on by herself and does something like a walking tour of the settlements in the area, and which presumably where a lot of these conscripts are from. And she isn't unwelcomed. The noble army is still nearby, along with the citizen army, so it's not peaceful. But she's doing a walking tour. She's going from place to place, doing the various things that what queens do, and isn't being instantly rejected. Not being welcomed in with open arms, but she's going about her business, seemingly unimpaired for now.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, we're gonna see what happens here, because so I think the king, having been tended to lovingly by, I think the king in this instance is she her. I think the king, having had her wounds tended to by the Sword Queen, they have like a tearful embrace and kiss, and I think the Sword Queen goes out to charge again and like sees kind of the Black Queen out just like on the road. And I think doesn't kill her necessarily, but takes her prisoner. Because she is a merciful queen, and the Black Queen has political power. It wouldn't also do to have the valorous Sword Queen just Mortal Kombat like kill the Black Queen in a field, but definitely have her taken prisoner and taken back to so when the queen takes a piece, so that's so in this case their methods are, it's an act of mercy, but this is still encroachment. So how does the Black Kingdom react to that?
Yep. So my prompt is that the whole country reacts. Do they mourn or rejoice? What ceremony or celebration occurs after their passing? I think that there's mourning. I think there is a certain, again, if this is someone who could go and have a walking tour of her own volition without necessarily being under the watchful eye of guards, that indicates her character to an extent. So I think she was certainly sort of a walking popular queen. There's mourning, but I think there's a sort of a degree of hope there. She's only been captured. She hasn't been killed. People are very unsure if there's ever going to be peace between the kingdoms, but there's definitely a sort of somber air. So I think it leans more towards mourn than rejoice. But there's no. I think maybe if there's a ceremony, it's for a popular ceremony, for like people celebrating, hoping that she'll come back. Maybe like prayer circles or something of the sort. But nothing. There's nothing on the state level because she isn't dead. So I think it's a popular bottom-up celebration of her as a person. I think is the way I go with this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everyone agrees. I think the noble army we've been talking about on that hilltop. I think at the sort of the news that the Sword Queen has taken the other queen captive. When a knight takes a piece, the nobles use their status and achieve something they wanted. Sometimes this improves the whole country. Sometimes it only helps the nobles. So I'm going to move my knight from here to take your queen. I'm not sure to kill Sword Queen, honestly, even though I think my nobles might be.
I mean, we can kill Sword Queen.
So here's my thing. There's an angle in which I think it's tricky because this prompt isn't like the nobles take military action. It's they use their status to get something they want. Do
they get Sword Queen to put down her sword? Or put down their sword?
Oh, maybe. I love that. Maybe there's some blackmail that happens. We talked about like maybe potential for family connections. So I think there's a like between our two kingdoms. So I think there's sort of a hostage taking of our own side in some ways, where my nobles identify who is in the family of the Sword Queen, and then they send a Sword Queen a letter saying, "Do you value your family or not? You know, they might only be distant family, but do you value them? If you do, come to this place at this time, and we can guarantee. And please, by all means, no need to bring your sword." And I think again, it's a similar dynamic where she's taken captive, but not or pretend, because she seems canny enough. I think she needs to be taken captive in some capacity. Because even just laying down her sword, I think she'd be a lot. Maybe it just is this uncomfortable hostage situation for the moment, potentially.
Yeah.
Maybe I like that more than a mirroring of the captive situation.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a case of like she can't be seen to be doing anything. So she can repel to retreat to court because of this hostage situation that's emerged.
Yeah, I think the Sword Queen also is maybe exiled then too.
Okay.
So, because when a queen is taken, once again, I'm just gonna look it over. I think they are mourning, but I think some of it is because under the pressure of their family, the Sword Queen is like put into exile and like disposed. And I think that action, because I think the Sword Queen was a foreign queen. I don't think she came from here. And I think her family, or their family, any pronouns are fine for Sword Queen, but they prefer they, them. But I think their family asks for them to come home and says like essentially calls for the marriage to be annulled, which is also very, very hard on like everybody. And I think then you're done for your move, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think what happens then, seeing just the morale, like the country and kingdom is flourishing in terms of like we had this miracle and everything, but I think the White King is so heartbroken that I think she forfeits. So when the king forfeits, the game is over. Both kings make a public appearance. Looking at the pieces left on the board, was this surrender a wise decision or too little too late? What has been saved? More importantly, what did the king and the people want to save? I think for the White King, she wanted like the like people would have kept fighting, but the fire has gone. And I think she can't in good conscience continue to ask the people to fight, after having this tremendous loss happen. So I think she surrenders in the hopes that maybe she could convince the Sword Queen's family and the Black Kingdom to allow the Sword Queen back. Because that's not only obviously the White King loves them very much, but also the Sword Queen was a symbol and people need their symbols, and that's a lot to lose. So
yeah, and a part of like the king forfeits, it's both kings making a public appearance. So could I step in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the Black King soon like agrees to like this potentially this parley, kind of what it sounds like, this talking terms, and I think there's a degree to which like it is a amicable resolution. I think there's a certain degree of like, oh, this has gone too far, And again, to imagine like the Black King, they kind of come out of their tower. They've been cooped up for months at this point, I guess. And they probably look not great. They probably don't look particularly regal. But I think there's definitely a degree to which like they are very happy to embrace the overture. I think in terms of like sort of this question, like what has been saved, was this a wise decision or was it too little, too late? Because our premise is about the initial conflict of the Third Kingdom, I do wonder if the Third Kingdom might be involved in the return of the Sword Queen in some way.
Yeah, maybe that foreign family was that Third Kingdom.
Oh yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's like a maybe there's initial armistice between our two sides, and then moves towards agreeing closer ties between our two kingdoms, then using it as an opportunity for both of us to get to the Third Kingdom. Again, maybe the story here is, hey, why are we competing over the Third Kingdom when we could try and all be friends a bit more? Maybe we can both use their favor.
Yeah. And you really think about it, like, I think both kingdoms kind of lost sight of that in the end.
Yes.
Or like at a certain point, it wasn't about that Third Kingdom anymore. It was just about who can make the bigger move.
Yes.
And nobody was really acting in favor of anyone's interests.
Mm-hmm. And I think like looking at like what we've taken from each other, and sort of like positioning on the board, I think maybe is like a bit more like a mixing between our two kingdoms. Like I've taken infrastructure from you, whereas you've taken religion from me, or faith. Maybe that's reflective in terms of our cultures. Maybe there's bridges between our two kingdoms, quite literally, where there had been rivers dividing us before we now built bridges over them. And there's more mixing of sort of the two faiths, particularly because the faith you took was more about the fairy faith of the Third Kingdom to an extent, all this kind of druidic faith we've been talking about. And I think maybe that's like the source of like the link between the two. And given my nobles are deep within your side of the board, I wonder if there's also more family mixing as well, like families being married off against each other to try and prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future, by encouraging closer familial bonds as well.
Yeah. And we take like the horseradish mushroom from your kingdom and the wheat and onion from my kingdom, and we combine them.
We get into like no one put together like, wait, the White King was really good at frying things.
Yeah, we combine our culinary expertise. and there's a sharing of knowledge. Maybe we get like a scene of like the Sword Queen like coming back and teaching the Black Queen like some of the art of fighting and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, just because we lost, all was not lost.
Mm-hmm. I just want to get like a scene in of like again we cut to some kind of like dressing room, and there's someone in a floral suit trying on like a big exaggerated Venetian mask, looking in the mirror being like, does this work? There's marrying of the fashion cultures between the two.
Robo, are you suggesting that someone creates the tuxedo mask?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's been Chess Two Kingdoms by Takuma Okada. We'll have the link in Twitch chat if you're interested in buying this game. Takuma is an amazing tabletop game designer, and they have a ton of awesome games that you should look into, especially a lot of single player journaling RPGs, so not even ones that you need multiple people to play. And thanks so much for joining me, Robo.
You're very welcome, Mikey. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here.
And once again, we're raising money for Trans Lifelines, so keep those donations coming. I know this is a VOD, so we haven't been able to call out donations. But thank you to all those who have donated during this segment, all those who have watched. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And if you've yet to donate, you can do so at SavePoint.stream. Make sure to check in there, both check out the donations that have already been submitted, as well as maybe to offer your own, should you be able to.
And with that, we'll kick it off to the next system. System or segment. Until then, be good and be good at it. Peace.
Peace. Bye.